some of the manpower and started what's called a Phase 2 adverse coverage, which brings the coverage from a normal of 4 up to 10. We continued the Phase 2 coverage till 11:30 in the morning on Sunday. We continued the Phase 1 coverage until 5:30 Sunday night.
Bill, just, the phase, you told us what phase 2 was in terms of man coverage. What's phase 1?
Phase 1 is two men,
Two additional people?
2 additional men.
Okay,
It's
thank
sort
you.
of like pre-coverage, it's like the calm before the storm.
Yep.
Phase 2 is 4 men on top of that, plus
Okay.
the 4 men working is 10.
All right, thank you.
All right? Peabody Court was evacuated at 0800 due to no power. We evacuated approximately 11 elderly to the building on the common,
8 o'clock Sunday morning?
8 o'clock Sunday morning. Powers restored sometime after that. We then evacuated or put them back in their homes around 11 o'clock. The majority of our calls were for tree and power lines down.
Question, when they were evacuated, where were they sent? Or what
To the
did you-
building on the common?
Building- Okay.
Building on the common. Reading Light was called for each incident that was required, and they were notified by the fire department dispatch. Some locations during the storm, Reading Light responded. I don't have an exact breakdown of where they responded, but early on in the start of the storm, they responded quite appropriately. And then after that, it just became overwhelming. That's my report, unless you have any questions.
Perhaps what we can do, Mr. Chairman, is give each department an opportunity to make the report and then open it up for general questions
Sure.
at that point.
Who's next?
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, let's let Mr. Murphy go. Yeah.
I happened to be working the desk that evening, so I had firsthand knowledge of some of the activities that went on. We pre-planned filling full shifts. We didn't hire anybody extra for the storm. Based upon the calls for service and the cooperation with the fire and the DPW, we felt we had enough personnel to respond to the various emergencies. During I broke it down by Saturday, approximately 6 o'clock is when we started getting most of the phone calls, and we responded to approximately 100 calls for service during that time. And that includes arrests as well. We had 2 arrests, domestic violence incident, and a sudden death as well. So we responded to 100 calls. After Monday, there were a few other,
It's 100 calls between 6 Saturday night until when?
just about 3 o'clock Monday afternoon.
Monday, so Saturday till Monday.
The majority, I think we had 60 calls for storm-related incidents, and then probably about 40 other calls throughout the weekend for the normal routine calls.
You should get 2 arrests
2 arrests.
and 1,
We had 1 domestic incident in between the storm, and we also had a few medical calls. One included a sudden death, which took a lot of manpower hours. But overall, I was happy with the response, cooperation with all departments. I was in constant contact with Bill Warnock, DPW, who did a great job. So, certainly speaking further down the road, communications with the community was difficult with, electricity out. There was not much we could do as far as getting the word out. I worked the desk. I didn't get many complaints other than emergency complaints. So people were, they were aware of that we were dealing with emergencies. So, I don't know if you've gotten complaints or not, but certainly the complaints were mostly active fires, live wires down, trees down across the roadways. That's pretty much the gist of what we responded to.
Yeah, I've got no complaints concerning service. I think the
None
complaints were
whatsoever.
directed at us because we didn't know what was going on. Communication down to us, to people, didn't exist, and that, I don't put
Well,
the blame
internally
over-
with us, the
Yeah.
communication was flowing,
Yep.
both with radio, face-to-face contact. Myself and the fire chief had face-to-face contact, and we also had radio contact with the DPW. So as things were coming in, I took a lot of the calls because there were a lot of 911 calls, and we just refer them to the proper agencies, including Reading Light, coordinated with the fire department as to who is calling who, so, and then, you know, there's some things internal that we can work better on as anything like this. You know, we do an after-action report, but, overall, I thought things went well, for us as emergency responders.
For Public Works, we're in our transition period for completing construction and getting ready for the winter, so we've been putting our equipment together, getting ready, taking off dump bodies, putting on sanders. For example, on Friday, we literally are installing the last piece of turf around the flagpole before we started getting on the equipment to get that ready. It snowed, we had everybody into snow, the boys were in for almost 30 hours straight. They were released early Sunday. In our situation, if we're plowing, if there's a pull down or a line that's electric, we just leave it and keep on going. We do not go near any wires. Can't tell a phone wire from a cable wire from a live wire. And basically, these guys quiet down about that time, and the response part kicks in with us Monday morning. We mobilize one crew from the town. We got a second piece of equipment rented, so we had a second crew out there. We got a third contractor in. So we divided the town into 3 zones. So we had 3 different crews in 3 different zones, going up basically main streets first, getting streets open, fully open for public safety access, and then clearing debris. I think Central Street was one of the worst ones in the town. Spent a lot of time there. And we've been continuing that, and we anticipate either tomorrow or Saturday morning we'll have it 100% done.
I think it's been amazing how much was done in such a short period of time in terms of the cleanup.
Okay, you can go to
Considering
other
what the
town-
town looked like? Oh, yeah.
We took a drive to Andover yesterday, and shockingly different
Shocking.
status.
It was, we were really taken back by
Yeah.
how still such a mess. Their own town trees too, in a lot of cases stolen around.
Yeah, Andover is actually not even cleaning up along the roadside unless it's on public property. So people that pull debris to the edge of the roadways, it's gonna stay there.
No, but I think a lot of people may have thought the response time for you guys to come around the neighborhoods and get the trees was a little long, but when you look at the magnitude of what you only, you had 3 crews out? 3 crews out trying to deal with the magnitude, I thought was actually pretty impressive.
Yeah, just after the storm, we have 19 people. Right now, we have 21 people down there to drive. We're currently 2 vacancies, 19 people. After the storm, the water department goes back to their thing, the mechanics have to, so we go down to a crew of like 9 people. So 9 people and 1 contracted crew from Viking Tree did all that work, which is pretty good.
All right, very good.
For getting word around late Monday, or started getting information from Electric Light to update some of what actually is happening. And I started distributing that to everybody in town hall. And then later on, I was distributed directly to you guys as well, just where we are, what's happening, what's the number of homes without power.
Yeah, that was,
And then they actually came up, Electric Light, after a day or 2, they had it down to which street address on the spreadsheet. So, for part of the response, I did that to keep everybody apprised what's happening in case a resident would call.
yeah, that was great. That was helpful.
Well, I'm the emergency management director. I decided not to open the emergency operations center. I used my own office as an auxiliary EOC because I have a television, computer, telephones, and access to MEMA. On Sunday, the fire chief called me about once an hour just to keep me appraised of the situation. I talked to Mary Prenny through the day because she was concerned about elderly people. We had one lady that was in her 90s that was an issue because she lost power. We didn't want to open up a shelter just for one person, so we would have placed her in a hotel, but one of her children took her to their house in Peabody that had electricity. Reading opened up a shelter, so we talked about that, and we said that if people needed shelter, we would send them to Reading, because that's a big push now that the state has had, using regional shelters rather than every community opening up their shelter and housing 2 or 3 people. It's a huge effort to open up a shelter. So they're going for the concept of regional shelter. Sunday afternoon, I took a drive around town. I went to the fire and police station and went to Central Street and Marblehead Street, just so I could put my own eyes on the situation, just to see what was going on. Everybody was taking care of their job, so I felt good, and went back to my office and was in contact with MEMA, kept them appraised of our situation in North Reading, both via telephone and electronically. There's a program called Web EOC that's quite nice. It's a database that sits on a server at MEMA, and you can just update your situation, and then you can see everybody in the state, so you get a feel for what's going on in the entire state. You can also make requests for equipment. We didn't need any equipment. I got no requests, so I didn't have to do that, but, so that was the situation.
I have a question for you, Theo. During the threatened hurricane, the Emergency Management Center, I think, was open?
Yes, we opened the EOC because that looked like it could be a pretty big incident. So I had the EOC going, and also in the same room, we had the Incident Command Center where all the department heads and Greg were there.
So I just, this isn't meant as criticism, but I'm trying to understand the decision not to open it this time.
I think based
What
on
were
our
the
experience with the hurricane, we kind of all knew. Function of EOC is so we all coordinate, and we basically had a dry run with the hurricane, so we kind of all work well together.
Mhm.
So it doesn't raise to the level of, this was a minor storm compared to a Hurricane Katrina. So
Well-
we didn't feel it raised to the level for our own internal coordination.
Okay,
That's what the purpose of EOC is.
Well, why I bring it up is that if you listen to the news the night before, I mean, they were predicting, you know, anything between 2 and 3 inches of this heavy snow would bring down a lot of trees, and it did. So I was just wondering what your decision process was. I'm not criticizing that you did or didn't, I just trying to
Really couldn't
understand.
do anything till it happened.
Well, I was watching the weather forecast, and we were right on that edge, the 2 to 3 inches, and it worked out because we did lose power to, what, 550 houses in North Reading, but that was quite minor compared to a place like Chelmsford that was 100% down.
Right, which brings up my next question, because earlier in the day, Greg got some information from Reading Light, was it?
Yeah, all of our information on power outages came from Reading Light.
That there was 150 outages. So, the question isn't so much, you know, and this kind of thing with people calling in and everything, and I don't know exactly, and we'll give Reading Light a chance to explain their process, and maybe we can get that out to the public as to the best way to report, you know, power outages. But we were at 150, and next thing you know, we were in the 500s.
150 households.
Households, not people, but with
Yeah,
structure.
No, but then it went to,
550 from
560.
150.
Well, I'm sorry, went to 400, and then it ratcheted up from there.
Right.
But I give the fire chief an opportunity to.
Okay, I'd like to start off, answer a question that you asked Theo. In my mind, the EOC was active, except it was what we call like a combative commander type of thing. Chief Murphy was on the desk at 911, couldn't leave. I was answering calls, couldn't go to the EOC. We were in constant contact with Theo, constant contact with Greg. So even though that we didn't actively have everybody in the room, we were doing it. And the truth is, under this situation, we couldn't have everybody in the room. He couldn't leave his post, I was tied up, so we really did have the EOC in place, except it was mobile, it was fluid, it was changing as conditions presented.
And I
I
had
guess I
all
had
the
a-
equipment that I would have had at the main EOC. I've got everything in my office, the same,
okay.
the same
That's a
communications
good,
equipment, so.
that's a good explanation. We just didn't know.
No, that's
It-
good.
Unlike the hurricane situation, we were getting updates on, I think, an hour, or every couple hours, we were getting updates. That didn't come. The only update or any information I received was late in the afternoon on Sunday regarding if anyone needed shelter, have them call the fire department, and they'll be brought over to Reading High School.
I'd like to address the second question about the 150. Sometime on Sunday, I believe it was probably about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I had my dispatch call Reading Light and get a number of homes that have been affected. I then walked to the police station and had them do the same thing to see if the number was exactly the same, and it was. After that, I called Greg and I said, Greg, this is the status, and this is where we are. I think what happened is that